All right, Unno School, March 31st, joined by Unno-san. And we have been discussing about productivity. And productivity is not a very easy concept. So basically, a very brief recap of what is productivity. So what we have been looking at is the past. In history, when we looked at the Industrial Revolution, we saw a very high economic growth that was actually resulted from a dramatic rise in productivity. And but what is that productivity? Because we are on the verge of a new technological revolution with IoT, biotech, artificial intelligence. These are all very promising technologies, and will it lead to a new wave of economic growth? Well, that is to be determined. That you can only decide that if you know what it will do to productivity. So, looking at productivity, basically first the definition. What is productivity? Productivity is the output per unit input. So if I work 1 hour, how much more can I produce? That is the definition of the rise of labor productivity. So what did we see about productivity and wages in the recent past? That we saw that up until around the early 1970s, there was a very close correlation between productivity growth and wage growth, and then we saw that the productivity was still increasing, but the actual median income of families was lagging behind. What was going on? Now we have been talking about this. But basically, what happened is that company profits went up because the productivity went up, but we didn't need more labor. We didn't need to pay people higher wages. Basically, for example, through the process of outsourcing your production from country A to low-cost country B, you would be able to actually get cost advantages. And those cost advantages did not go to the workers, obviously. They went to the people who owned the companies, who owned the means of production, the capital owners. So there was a discrepancy in the rise of productivity and the median income. So we saw that also in this graph, that the share of labor in business is reducing at the cost of a higher capital share. Another problem that we observed is that actually there is relatively low productivity growth in the recent years. And why is that? Economists have come up with all kinds of possible reasons for that. Innovation has slowed down. Venture capital has retreated in recent years. Basically because the economy is not doing well, we're not investing a lot, and because we're not investing a lot, we are not becoming much more productive. Companies are not investing in training for their staff, etc., etc. But it's not really convincing. So what is really happening? And we found a more convincing explanation from Paul Samuelson. And he says, okay, well, basically we are in a transition period. That means that there are companies that are very innovative, that are very productive, that come up with technology and ways of working that are innovative, and these companies actually are very productive. They also make high profits, but they are just the front runners. The rest of the economy is still playing catch up. So one example is the retail industry. In the retail industry, we saw Amazon. They got a very firm leading position in online retail and e-commerce, and what we see is that Amazon has a high productivity, has good profitability, but at the same time online sales of in retail is only 7.3% of the entire online resales. So what we are seeing is that the established retailers like Walmart, what they have been doing is they are scared that they in the future will lose out their position to Amazon and other companies like Amazon, and they've been investing also in their online presence. So Walmart now also has an online retail store, but the profitability of Walmart has not increased, not at all. And like Walmart, there are other retailers who have basically expanded their existing channel, the stores, with online presence. And this is a cost duplication. That means that companies like Walmart, companies other like Costco, they have not become much more productive with the new technology. Basically, they are just forced to duplicate their efforts, and this cost duplication actually doesn't lead to increase in productivity, but for the entire industry, for the entire retail industry, it actually means that probably there is not a productivity increase at all. It's just the leader, the early innovator, who is capable of increasing its productivity, while the rest of the industry is lagging behind. Now, what other industries do we see this? For example, newspaper publishing. They have the offline print and the online print. The telecommunications, where we have the cellular network next to the traditional landline network. So for the economy as a whole, these disruptions are not immediately taking effect because there are existing infrastructures, there are vested interests, and they do not change from one day to the next. So the reason why we are seeing such a slow uptake in productivity is that this productivity gains is only bringing benefits to the new players, to the people who are the early innovators. These companies are capable of getting dramatic productivity gains, and the rest is just playing catch up, and they need to invest in order to maintain their position without actually becoming more profitable. So that is a much more plausible explanation as to why we don't see a lot of productivity growth in the near future. Now, what we're going to discuss next is what does that mean for Japan. Japan has a lot of incumbent industries with doing business in a traditional way. What will these new technologies that are coming in from Japan and also from overseas, what would this mean for the existing industries? Will they be able to adapt? Will they be able to benefit from the potential productivity growth? Or will they also have to go through a period of transition and actually have higher costs and lower profitability? Because if that is the case, and we put that against the demographic developments, and maybe things do not, the new technology in terms of GDP growth is not as promising as we might expect at first sight. So so much about productivity. I think it's time to move on and leave productivity behind and move on to the next topic. Is that okay?
Yeah, summarize cost of overlap.
Right.
Again, overlap.
Yeah. Okay, so the cost of overlap, basically it means that it takes time for an industry to move from one infrastructure to the next. There are innovative new companies that bring new technology that can do things much smarter, much faster at lower costs. And these companies, but they are able to disrupt somehow, but they are also only minor players in the entire industry. So take Amazon. Amazon is an important company. Everybody's looking at Amazon. Everybody's afraid of Amazon. But Amazon only accounts for a small percentage of the entire retail industry. The reality is that everybody else is not growing. So Amazon, using innovative new technology, is using innovative new business model, is successful doing that. but their profits, their gains in productivity are basically being nullified by all the other companies that are lagging behind.
But what does mean overlap? But it doesn't mean overlap.
It means that it will take time for companies to adopt, to write off their old infrastructure and to build up the new infrastructure. So that means that during that transition time, we are actually increasing our costs. That means that even though there is new technology, it will take time before there is mass adaptation.
Yeah, I understand. But what does mean overlap? This meaning overlap is overlap.
Overlap means that, for example,
overlap, right?
yes. So
What
newspaper company needs to maintain their online presence plus their paper presence. They cannot just say, "Oh, let's just get rid of all the newspapers, all the physical newspapers," because that's where most of the revenue
You mean
comes
transition?
from. The transition period.
Okay, go ahead. Move on.
Yep. And there is oil. Too. What? But what?
What?
I don't know what I wrote here. And there is oil to put the brakes on further. To put the brakes on further. Sorry. It's not but, to put. This is not a B, but a P. So what we see is that we have the incumbent industries and the industries that are going through transitions that basically put a brake on the potential for economic growth. But we also have
Why oil?
oil. While oil, an excellent question.
2008.
All right, welcome back to the show here. Oil to 147. We went.
Remember that month? In that month, Brent crude oil hit a record price of $147 on world markets. And when it hit that record price, the whole global economy shut down. Silence. Completely gone. That was the economic earthquake. The collapse of the financial market 60 days later was the aftershock.
Mayhem, carnage, and bloodbath. Call it what you want, but what we saw on global stock markets today was ill-disguised panic.
Good evening. This was the day after what may someday be called Black Monday on Wall Street because it was perhaps the worst financial collapse since the Great Depression.
Our policy leaders are still dealing with the aftershock, not the earthquake. Why was it the earthquake? Because the entire industrial revolution that we've gone through is all dependent on the carbon deposits of a previous period in history. You know, if we look back, let's say that we make it through this next period of history. I always wonder, what will future generations think of us maybe in 100,000 years from now? And they'll say, oh, yes, we remember them. There was the Bronze Age, the Iron Age. These were the fossil fuel people. They dug up the burial grounds of the Carboniferous era and created a short-lived, dramatic, and very dangerous civilization. It's all about fossil fuels. Our fertilizers and pesticides are made out of fossil fuels. Our construction materials are made out of fossil fuels. Most of our pharmaceutical products are made out of fossil fuels. Our synthetic fiber, our power, our transport, our heat and lights, all made out of, moved by fossil fuels. So when the price of oil goes over around 95 a barrel, all the other prices go up. When we get into the zone of around 115 a barrel, prices become so high that purchasing power slows. This is the sunset of a great industrial era. Now, you remember in 2009, oil went down to 50 a barrel because the economy had shut down. There was no activity. In 2010, we tried to regrow inventories, so oil prices started to go up. All the other prices started to go up. And in 2014, we hit a new peak of 114 or 15 a barrel. Purchasing power slowed down again. This is a convulsion of growth, shutdown, growth, shutdown. And the only reason oil went down in the last few years to 30 a barrel is now the fossil fuel industry is fighting among themselves in the sunset. OPEC said, we're going to keep the oil spigot open. We're going to flood the world with oil. And that's going to take the price down to 30 a barrel and wipe out our new competitors, the more exotic fossil fuels, shale gas in the U.S., tar sands in Canada. And guess what? They wiped them out. Only took a year and a half. Bankruptcies across the United States in the shale gas industry. And now tar sands in Canada, the pipeline's not happening. And do you hear anybody talking about energy independent right now? It's over. And as soon as the bankruptcies complete themselves, the oil prices are now starting to go back up. But now we have failed states. Where there's oil production, we have failed states. So this is a volatile, convulsive sunset over the next 40 to 50 years, an unstable world. Where do we head from here?
Failed states, what does it mean?
Failed states. Oh, that's the for example, Iran or Iraq is maybe a better example.
Oh, okay, okay.
Where they produce oil, but they have unstable governments.
Okay.
Oh, okay. So
oil is big impact for industry.
Oil has a big impact on the industry. So, and he says, well, basically, as the world GDP rises, the demand for oil rises. We saw this, and it rises actually exponentially, more than if the economy grows 5%, then the demand for oil increases even more than that. There are three key features: are lower price elasticity of demand. So basically, that means that if the price goes up, there is the demand doesn't go down that much because we need oil. Oil is in everything. So if the price goes up, we cannot reduce the oil intake so much because there's too much depending on oil to move and to produce. And the strong growth in demand from China and Middle East and other newly industrialized economies, so that just keeps on rising the oil level, and the failure of global production to increase. Now we have shale oil, and actually this is where I disagree with
what is mean failure of global production?
The failure of global. So basically, this is what he's saying is that it's finite. Our reserves, our carbon reserves, are finite. We cannot grow them actually. And what he said in the video is that we see a convulsion where basically the price goes down, and then when the price goes down, like producers of more expensive natural resources like shale gas, they need a higher price in order to be profitable. So they go out of business, and then once they're out of business, then the OPEC
because price is down, that's the reason why they increase production.
Right.
Okay.
Right. So these facts explain the initial strong pressure on the prices that may have triggered the commodity speculation in the first place. So if speculators know that if there is a period of high growth, then the people become more inclined to invest in oil and oil futures, because that will bring profitability, because we know already that in a strong economy the prices of oil will go up. So that means that every time the economy grows, the price of oil will go up through speculation, because basically we need oil to drive that economic growth. But once the price reaches a certain level, the economic growth comes to a halt because the prices are too high. And we cannot afford it anymore. That basically leads to an economic meltdown. Bang. So oil becomes a brake on our potential to grow our economy. That is his argument, because oil is finite. We need oil, and because of speculation, because it will lead to, once we start growing, that growth will be offset by a very high oil price, which will cause the growth
But
to
how
collapse.
come current oil price is staggering?
So basically, that's after an implosion.
Yeah.
You will see that the price will go down, and that lower oil price will facilitate economic growth. Then once the economic growth starts to materialize, the price of oil will go up.
Yeah, supposed to be going up, but not going up.
So are we doing so well in terms of economic growth?
Yeah. Why not oil price is going up? It's like going up to $80, you know?
It's probably artificial, but I think one of the reasons is this, because what we see right now at the moment. So basically, let's first focus on what he was talking about, and then look at the reality, because you're right, actually. So this is what we saw. So what we saw here is a low. Basically, we see economic growth, high economic growth, and we see the oil price going up in the period of high economic growth. So it overshoots here. And then it becomes too high, and then bang, it collapses. And then with the collapse, also the oil price goes down. And then the oil price will go up again. And the economy, at a low oil price, the economy can grow again. Then the oil price will go up, and then bang, it hits the ceiling.
But see, oil price not going up.
Oil price is going up with
little bit. Not catching up. Like this.
So,
this one is catching up the economic growth, and the concurrent is down, and economic growth going up, and still good, but oil price is not catching up. Why?
Basically here, I think this is
like this was 2011, right?
Right.
This is like this.
Right.
Like this. Economy going up.
So here is where basically OPEC also decided to increase the production, right? Why did they do that? Because they wanted to keep the oil price low. If the high oil price was there, they would enable shale production to actually become profitable, and but they would invite new competitors in their market.
You're talking about shale production?
Yeah. So what
shale oil?
Yeah. So what he is saying is that shale is dead, but shale is not dead, actually. This is what happened after he...
I can't see the scale. When is the bottom? 2014?
This is 1990, 95, 2005, 2010, 2010. Yeah.
Now it's...
now this is December 17. 10 million barrels in the US oil production.
Okay.
That is, I don't know, per which unit. But
it's same volume as Saudi Arabia, right?
Yeah, it's huge.
Yeah, huge.
So a sharp recovery in drilling following the drop in activity after the 2014 oil price collapse.
Just only 3 years, double up.
Yeah. And that's largely based on shale. Driven by growth from the America's shale fields. Despite this achievement, investors still worry about the prospects for shale drillers who use expensive advanced technology to produce oil. Frackers remain dependent on debt, equity, and other types of outside capital to replenish rapidly depleting wells. So we see actually he's not right. On the one hand, I think he's not right because...
What is he's not right?
He's not right he said that already the shale oil industry is dead because they basically have been killed by OPEC. OPEC reduces the price, everybody's going bankrupt.
I know oil price is going to increase, so shale oil again revived.
Yeah, shale oil revived.
So $30 from going up to $60 per barrel. Now shale oil
can be
big production.
Yeah, but it's still very tricky because the margins are not that big, and the exploration techniques available at the moment are expensive. So they still need to rely on heavy loans, big loans from the financial markets.
I understand. At that time, $30 per barrel. At that time, big shale oil well closed down.
Right.
But now it's open. Many of them open.
Right. But it's still very, very unsure whether they will be able to maintain that. Right. Very unsure. Yeah. Because it's not really sure. Because also the financial markets are a little bit worried about the future of shale oil.
Yeah.
Because it's obvious. Like once the price per barrel goes down, which is very likely because it's very volatile. they will not be able to repay it, and then bankruptcies become very likely, especially with a big financial burden around their necks. So he's not right, but I think the narrative is still correct. There is a big problem with oil, and oil can be a big brake on our potential to grow. So we have the problem with the adaptation of technology. It will take time. It will take time for transition. So we need to look at that also in the perspective of Japan. Plus, we have the effect of the oil price, because the oil price is what drives our economy. The second industrial revolution made us to all adopt oil, and that has become basically now our pitfall, because oil now will determine whether or not we can grow, and it will basically put a natural counterbalance in our growth potential. So how further?
Where do we head from here? Let me share an anecdote. When Angela Merkel became Chancellor of Germany, she asked me to come to Berlin in the first couple...
This is getting very complicated, Unno-san. This is becoming complicated, so you better pay close attention. Is it okay?
No.
Yep. Okay,
Okay, go ahead.
Okay. So when he went to visit Angela Merkel after she became Bundeskanzler in Germany,
the weeks of her new government, to help her address the question of how to grow the German economy on her watch. Now remember, in terms of per capita, Germany is the most robust capitalist market economy in the world. When I got to Berlin, the first question I asked the new chancellor, I said, Madam Chancellor, how are you going to grow the German economy when your businesses are plugged into a platform, an infrastructure of centralized telecommunication, fossil fuel nuclear power, internal combustion road, rail, water, and air transport, and that infrastructure peaked in its productivity in Germany years ago? Let me talk about productivity. This is crucial. Our economists are lamenting. They're asking why.
So basically, he says the infrastructure, the second industrial revolution infrastructure, based on oil, based on our communication infrastructure, centralized energy, nuclear power, oil power. Seen what we have seen, what happens with the oil prices. Seen that basically Germany is not capable of increasing its energy efficiency on the old infrastructure. Germany doesn't have much potential to grow anymore. So what needs to happen? Now he's talking about the principle of finding a new technological infrastructure, the necessity of doing that.
Activity been declining for 20 years. We have all these new killer products coming out of Silicon Valley. Why is productivity declining? I'm going to share with you a dirty little secret in economics that economists don't like to talk about. We used to believe that there are two factors that drive productivity in standard economic theory: better machines and better performing workers. But when Robert Solow won the Nobel Prize for economic growth theory in the mid-1980s, he actually let the little secret out. He said, we've got a problem here. When we trace every single year of the Industrial Revolution, these two factors, better machines, better workers, it only accounts for about 14% of the productivity. So Robert Solow asked the big question, where's the other 86% of productivity come from? Don't know. Moses Abramowitz, the former head of the American Economic Association, said, quote, this is a measure of our ignorance. Now, wouldn't you think economists would know where productivity comes from because that's the basis of the discipline? Here's why they don't know. When classical economic theory was penned in the late 1700s, the vogue was Newton's physics. Newton was the big guy in town. Everybody wanted to use Newton's metaphor so they could be more scientific because he had discovered the laws that run the universe, supposedly. The economists also fell in line. For example, you know Newton's law, for every action there's an equal and opposite reaction? Adam Smith borrowed that metaphor for his invisible hand of supply and demand. For every action on the supply side, there's an equal and opposite reaction on the demand side. Newton's law, a body in motion stays in motion unless disrupted. Baptist say borrowed that metaphor, the French economist. And he suggested that, well, supply will stimulate demand, which will generate supply, which will stimulate demand unless disrupted. All of our economic theory, if you go back and take a look at it, it's all based on Newton's metaphors in physics. There's only one problem with this. Newton's physics has absolutely nothing to do with economics. Nothing. Nothing. Economics is governed by the same laws that govern the universe, the solar system, the biosphere on Earth, and every single thing you and I do in our economic life while we're here on this planet. Here are the two laws that govern everything in the universe, including our economy. The first law of energy says all the energy in the universe is constant since the Big Bang. No new energy has been created, no energy has been destroyed since the Big Bang. That's the conservation law. The second law of energy says that's true, that the energy isn't created or destroyed, but it always changes form, but only in one direction. From concentrated, the Big Bang, to dispersed through the galaxies. From hot to cooled off through the galaxies. From order to disorder. From available to unavailable. Entropy is a measure of the energy that's still there, but not available to do useful work. There are three systems that we can talk about in thermodynamics. An open system that exchanges matter and energy with the outside world. A closed system which exchanges energy with the outside world but doesn't exchange matter. And an isolated system which doesn't exchange matter or energy with the outside world. The Earth, in relation to the solar system and sun, is B. We get plenty of energy from the sun. We don't have to worry about this for billions of years. But in terms of the fixed matter on this planet, we don't have a lot of additional matter coming down here. We get a few meteorites, a little cosmic dust, but whatever we have in terms of fixed matter, which is a form of energy, has been here since we blew off the sun and cooled off.
That's a closed
All of you
system,
have smartphones on you right now, and there are little granules of rare earths in those phones. They've been here since the Earth has been here. That's a form of energy. It's a material form. So, here's what economics is all about. We extract low entropy available energy in nature, a rare earth, a metallic ore, a fossil fuel. We extract it, and then through our value chains, we store it, we ship it, we produce goods and services from it, we consume it, we recycle it back to nature. Those are value chains. At every step of conversion, when we take nature's resources and move it through society, at every step of conversion, we have to embed energy into that good or service to get it to the next stage of what it becomes. But we lose some energy in the process of that conversion. This is called aggregate efficiency in economics. Aggregate efficiency is the ratio of the potential work versus the actual useful work you actually embed in the good or service. Let me give you an example. Nature has the same economic conditions that we have in our human economy. If a lion chases down an antelope in the wild and kills it, about 10 to 20% of the total energy that's in that antelope gets embedded into the lion. The rest is heat loss in the conversion. That's the aggregate efficiency. What does this have to do with my conversation with the Chancellor of Germany? She's a physicist, you know, by background. So here's what I said to her. We started the second industrial revolution in 1905 in the United States with 3% aggregate efficiency. Every conversion of nature's resources through the value chains, we lost about 97%. It didn't get into the product or service. By 1990, the U.S. got up to about 14% aggregate efficiency. That was our ceiling. Nothing's changed since then. And I reported to the Chancellor that Germany got up to about 18.5% aggregate efficiency. That was their ceiling. Nothing's changed. Anybody want to guess which country led the world in aggregate efficiency? Japan. 20% aggregate efficiency, 1990s, reached its ceiling. What I'm saying to the Chancellor is this. You can have market reforms, labor reforms, monetary reforms. You can create incentives for killer new products. You can try to create 1 million Steve Jobs. It won't make a damn bit of difference. If your businesses are still plugged in to a second industrial revolution infrastructure, you can't get above the ceiling of 20% aggregate efficiency anywhere in the world. Why is this important? A new generation of economists who happen to study physics have gone back and looked at the industrial record, and they added a third factor to productivity. Better machines, better workers, aggregate efficiency. The ratio of yes, it's so obvious. The ratio of potential to useful work. When they put in that third factor, it accounts for much of the rest of productivity. Henry Ford could have told you this. In fact, every engineer could have told you this. Every architect could have told you this. Every biologist could have told you this. Every chemist could have told you this. They all have to start their training in school by learning these 2 laws of energy that govern the universe. I teach in the oldest business school in the world. I taught the advanced management program at the Unno School for 15 years. Not a single business school in the world today, right now, requires that you learn about the first and second laws of thermodynamics that govern economic activity. How shameful is this?
What he wanted to say.
So
I don't understand well.
Well, no, that's very understandable, because this goes very deep all of a sudden. So he's talking about the law of thermodynamics. And basically, it means that we have heat loss with every step of production productivity. So we take 100% energy in, well, 100%. Well, potential is 100%, but we only utilize about, in Japan's case, 80%. We lose of 20%. We lose 80% of its potential use. We also learned that actually labor and capital only account for a limited percentage of our for productivity growth, right? That means that actually the way that we have been successful in growing our economy is by adding more energy into our production process. So that energy, adding more energy, basically there is a limit on the amount of energy available, right? Oil is limited. It's a closed system, as he said. Okay, there are 3 kinds of systems. There's an open system. There's a second kind of system that receives energy but doesn't give it back, and there is a closed system. And we are living in an energy situation where that is closed. So the given that, the only way that we can grow, that we can successfully grow our economy, that we have real potential to grow our economy, is by adding more energy, because we have reached our peak in terms of energy efficiency. But we only have a limited amount of fossil fuels available, and we have seen that if you increase the amount of fossil fuels that you consume, the price will go up, and it will stop down the economic growth. So basically, you're trapped. The way to grow your economy is putting more energy into the system. But if you don't have that energy, or if you can only get that energy at a higher price, basically you kill off your own system. So what he's trying to explain is that countries like Germany and like the United States and like Japan, we are basically hooked into a technological platform that is powered by oil that doesn't have a future. This is a sunset economy. So the only way to move forward is not doing things more efficiently in terms of labor and capital. The big step that we need to make is to move our technological platform from combustion engine oil-driven economy to a new source of energy, to new sources of communication technology, to new ways of moving the economy.
But he's talking about 86% is what?
Energy.
Oh, he said energy.
Energy. There is no 100% explanation for that. We are not quite there yet. So the economic figures says, but they get much better explanation of the data, of the productivity data, including the energy resource.
His message is we need to consider more efficiency, how to utilize the energy.
We need to move to a different source of energy.
Different source of energy.
Not oil.
Oh, not oil.
Right.
His message is.
Yeah.
But she says.
But not only that. He says, so we need to, the new technology platform is not only it's about communication, about new sources of energy, and about new sources for new ways of moving, driving the economy.
She said 14% is labor and capital productivity, right?
Could be explained by 16% could be of the economic
84% cannot explain.
Right.
I don't understand why energy. What is the total GDP content? He said.
So basically, what we use in our production is we use labor, we use machines, and we use energy.
Oh, he said labor, capital, and energy.
Right.
Still, it's not clear. It's energy.
So there's heat loss, there's inefficiency, and so you have a limited amount of energy, so you transform that, just like the lion kills the antelope. Now the lion can learn how to hunt faster. Maybe he can develop shoes that will allow him to run faster, but that will actually increase his energy efficiency, but only so much. So basically it peaked out, like Germany peaked out at 18.5 energy efficiency. Basically, if they wanted to grow their economy, the only way forward was to actually put in more energy, more energy efficiency. Japan reached the highest level of energy efficiency in the world at 20%.
I thought a major portion of measure of GDP is based upon remaining worker or workers or household.
Right.
It doesn't match, productivity to the country. Okay, company workers or private company workers. This is not the majority of the total population.
We're getting at that. That's included. Underutilized energy.
Yeah, this is not energy.
It's a form of energy.
Energy.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the portion. Big portion is impact for the productivity and GDP growth. This lagging, that I call the lagging.
Right.
Economy and productivity. So just company or business doing people cause a lot of productivity, but in totally effect is not so big.
Offset.
This is what I thought. But he said energy is 84%.
Well, energy. No, basically he's talking about different things, right? He's correlation between the economic growth data and the correlation between the extra input in labor and the productivity of our labor. So he's talking about correlation, not that the total input of our this is the success of Japan, the success of Germany, the success of the United States can be explained by superior labor skills, for example, by superior technology, but also about how efficient they are with their with their resources, the utilization of their resources. Now, that efficiency of utilization of resources, that has not been part of the production function. So basically, if you go back and you look at GDP numbers in the United States, in Great Britain, in different countries, and you look at, okay, so this is what the GDP did. Now let's have a look at, okay, how much what was the labor productivity? What was the capital productivity in this period? And they found that actually there didn't seem to be a very close correlation between the input of labor, the input of capital, and the GDP. What they expected. Actually, the correlation between those two numbers and the GDP was very limited. Now they've added energy efficiency to the equation. So now they look at the sum of labor productivity, capital productivity, and energy efficiency. And they found much higher correlation between GDP and the factor production, the user of these labor, capital, and energy. So the point is that actually our economic theory was insufficient to explain productivity, insufficient to because it ignored a very important.
So what he wanted to say, increase energy efficiency,
right?
But what I'm thinking about that, just at the front of his question, 84% means I thought, okay, we try to hire women. We try to raise the age of the retirement older people. So this is going to be more expand workers. So it increases productivity.
Well, what it means, okay, that's next week we will look at the video, and actually his vision is very grandiose. It's not only about including more women, etc. It's more than that.
For example, okay, Japan GDP growth will going to attain 6 or 7%.
Right.
If you want to do that, you try to open the door for women, and you try to ask elder people to 65 to 70 years old. So we're going to expand more labor workforce. So it increase GDP.
Right. So that basically you put in more input. But actually it's also about, okay, how to utilize our labor force in a way that it actually we are able to produce not only a one-on-one relationship, but actually the extra additional labor force will produce, we start to work differently, using energy differently, using different ways of communication, different sources of energy, and by doing that, we can actually produce the output of our labor much more than by just putting the same resource, adding more resources to the process. So it's not only by adding more resources to your production capacity, it's actually by.
By the way, AI and robotics those are not resources.
They will be resources for production.
So it means actually the add women, older age, but also robot and AI.
Exactly. Plus different source of energy, different sort of technology, a different way of working together. So we need a different communication.
He said energy is like sort of what I said is energy.
Yeah, that's energy.
So robotic, AI, and woman. And
no. Energy is solar energy.
Oh, solar energy. Yeah. Solar energy.
Solar
you
energy.
mean the nuclear power plant?
Solar energy, not nuclear power plant.
Solar energy. Well, I don't know what it means.
Okay, so shall we look at the video next week? It's very,
okay.
very, very interesting.
Okay.
Because it's not only about the energy; it's about the new technology platform, right?
Okay.
The way we move things, the way we power things, and the way that we communicate, we control things.
Let's move to party. Okay, just
yeah, but I'm not sure whether I will go to the party, Unno-san, because it seems like nobody's there.
No. Tochikura will come and his girlfriend will come.
His girlfriend?
Yeah.
He has a girlfriend?
Close. I tell you that no.
Oh, let's close the video first.
Yeah. No. That one. That one. Yeah. This one.
Oh, that looks surprisingly low.
Yeah, this one. And